Hey there, Netcode-Hub channel followers, Frederick is here, and today we are diving into an essential aspect of modern microservices architecture, that is communicating asynchronously between multiple APIs using MassTransit and RabbitMQ. We will be harnessing the power of Docker to streamline our setup and deployment, making it easier than ever to get your system talking to each other efficiently and effectively. Let's first talk about microservice. What is microservice, or what are microservices? They are software development architecture that structures an application as a collection of small, independent, and loosely coupled services. Each service is responsible for a specific functionality and can be developed, deployed, and scaled. Imagine you are building a modern e-commerce platform that needs to handle a high volume of orders efficiently. Your system comprises of multiple microservices, now each responsible for different aspects of the ordering process workflow. Let's break this down. Maybe your e-commerce system is going to have order service, inventory service, payment service, shipping service, and maybe, notification service. Now all this, instead of you to put all of this together as a monolithic application, as a one package application, no, you decide to create a separate APIs for each to handle each of the services. Now when you're done with that, you have a microservices. Now these microservices, how can you communicate asynchronously between them? That is the reason why you need to use MassTransit and RabbitMQ. Asynchronous communication is a form of communication where the sender and the receiver, so talking about APIs here, they do not need to interact with each other at the same time. So in this context, messages or data are sent by the sender and can be processed by the receiver at a later time. This allows for more flexible and efficient communication, especially in distributed systems or microservices. So when you have two APIs configured, when you make a call, an HTTP call to the next one, you wait for that server to serve you the response before you can return to the user. That is synchronous communication. Now within this, the receiver needs to wait for the sender to give or return the resource before the receiver can return it. But with the asynchronous, no, the sender can send it, and now the sender, after sending, the sender can be doing different things altogether. The receiver can later down the day go in there and now get the content and now try processing it. So you can see when talking about this synchronous communication, it is flexible. So the next question is, why use MassTransit and RabbitMQ? In the world of microservices, ensuring that your services can communicate seamlessly is very, very important. Now, let's see. With the MassTransit, this is powerful and also is an open source message bus that simplifies the creation of robust and scalable distributed systems. Aside from that, it also abstracts the complexities of message brokering, making it easier for developers like you and I to implement asynchronous messaging in .NET applications. So that's the reason why I need to go for MassTransit. What of RabbitMQ? It is also the leading open source message broker, message broadcaster, broadcaster. Alright, so RabbitMQ supports multiple messaging protocols and is also known for its reliability and ease of use. It is perfect for handling the communication between your services. Having two or more APIs, you can do that with this RabbitMQ. Ensuring messages are delivered even if some of your services are temporarily unavailable. They will wait in a queue. As soon as your service is up, it go in there, fetch the response, and I'll start using it. So you see that's the reason why I need to go for the MassTransit and RabbitMQ. Then I made mention of Docker. Why are you going to use Docker? With the use of Docker, you can create consistent and isolated environment for your services, ensuring that they run the same way across different systems. You see, so this makes setting up and maintaining your message broker and related services much more manageable. This is the whole idea of what you're going to do today. Now, you know, we're going to have a publisher and a consumer. We're going to create two APIs. Now, one's going to be publisher and one's going to be consumer. You know, in the world of RabbitMQ, you need to have a consumer and a publisher. What is publisher? What is consumer? Publisher publishes message, broadcast message to the service. Now, consumer consumes the service and utilize it in its own API. Bear in mind that you're going to have two APIs. So let's say the first one, as soon as we add data to the first API, it broadcasts that data that we just added and make it globally available to all services which are connected. So if any service has connected to this hub, then this service can also retrieve the message and now use it in its process. This is very simple, and that is what we're going to do today. So we're going to create solution first. So click on Launch of Visual Studio 2022 or higher, then click on Create New Project. Now within that, I'm going to have a solution first. So the solution, maybe I can have a solution name. Maybe so. Let's see. So blank solution. And now what is the name that I'm going to use? Maybe I can decide to use this one. Sounds weird. Yes, very long, but never mind. It's still going to work. I choose a location and I click on Create to get this solution created. After that, let's see what next to do. So now that we have the solution created, we're going to add two projects, and also we're going to add one class library, which is going to be shared for the two APIs. Okay, so let's quickly do that. Right click on solution. We're going to add a new project in here, and here is going to be API. You see this? So here, there's going to be publisher. So publisher API. Let's create it. Now this is done. When you go to solution, you can see you have it in there. We're going to also create another, going to add another project. There's going to be the same API, but guess what? There's going to be consumer API. So let's create this as well. It's also added, as you can see from the solution, we have two APIs. Now let's add a shared library. So that's going to be new project. So click on C# library, and now here I can give it a simple name as shared. Click on create to add this project as well. So when you check your solution, we're going to have 3 projects, 2 APIs, and now 1 shared library. Maybe I can just remove this class. Yes. Okay. Now we're going to share this library among these two. So maybe I can just add the dependency before it's too late. Will it be too late? Although we can add it, but you know, let's configure it here. So add from this, maybe you can add project reference as well. Then add the shared. So you can see we are sharing this library among these two web APIs. Now, since we are going to be using the MassTransit and RabbitMQ for both APIs, we need to install them. But I have the package reference already, so I'm going to just reload the project, offload it, and I reload it, and that is all. But since you're not having, you can just right click on dependencies, then go to manage to get packages for both projects, and I'm going to add this. So I'll just offload my project, save it. Yes, so offload it. So here, I'll just paste these 2 packages. This is what you need to install. So I have these 2 packages, MassTransit. This is the current version of 8.2.3. As I record this video, maybe you have higher than this or the same. Then you have that's a RabbitMQ, and you need to install these 2 packages. Okay, so once I'm done, I'm going to reload project with dependencies. Then I'll do same to the publisher, because you need to install these 2 packages on each. So offload project. Then I'm going to paste them here, save it, then reload project with dependencies. So when I'm done with this, it means I have all my packages, my needed packages being installed, and that's great. Okay, The next thing that we're going to do here is, let's say we can create a class in here. Now this class is going to be used by both of the APIs. Okay, so let's add a class, and now this class is going to handle my message, any message at all that you want to pass it on, or my weather forecast. You can actually use that. Now since we have weather forecast in here, I think we have to use this weather forecast. So you see, because both projects have the same weather forecast, so we can move one and now drop it onto the shared. Great. So we have this weather forecast in here. Now let's change the namespace, and this is shared. So now that we have this, we can go ahead and remove the default ones from here. So let's delete this, go to the publisher API, and also remove this weather forecast class. Now when you go to the controller, by all means, you're going to have an issue. So you need to make reference to the C# class library that we added. Okay, so that is using shared. You need to add reference to this to get this. Good. Now let's do same to this one, the weather forecast in the consumer API controller. Then using shared, we have it set. So it is the same, just that you move this class to a single unit, which is going to be shared by both APIs. Now, in order to use the MassTransit in the publisher, let's go to the program and register that in here. So before you have your app.build, you need to specify that in here. So let's say this build.services. Now, since we have installed this MassTransit package, we can use add MassTransit, and it should be here. So control period, let's see. So build.services.add MassTransit. We should have this in here. If not, then let's see whether the package were fully restored. So if I go to dependencies, packages, do I have it? Yes, I do. Then I'm going to include a namespace. So using MassTransit. Then here you can see this is off. Now I need to make some specifications in here. So let's use, maybe I can specify this x lambda. Then in that I can open this. Let me just move all this to close it. Okay. Now in here we're going to x.using RabbitMQ. Now with this, let's specify our context. Now we have our context and configuration. We need a configuration as well. So maybe once you have this, you can also expand. So I'll just pass in just h like this to expand. Let me just terminate this. So now that we are using a RabbitMQ, which has a context and configuration, we can specify our username and our password, and also the host. Now you know we are going to use the default one, and the default one is going to be guest for host name, and also that's the username, and now guest for password. You can actually specify your own username and password as well, but let's maintain the default one. So in here we're going to have this to configure that, and that's the configuration.host. And we are specifying it at localhost because that is where our RabbitMQ server is going to get run. Then we have a username in here as get, and then the password also as guest. So this is what we need to add a service of MassTransit and configure our RabbitMQ in here as well. Okay, so now that we have this, what that we're going to do here is quite simple. We can go to our controller and I'll start using this service. As earlier on, it's very easy to configure that and start using. Okay, now let's go to our controller from here. So you know we having our controller. There's a publisher. So in our weather forecast controller, you can see from here that we are having a list of weather forecast, right? So maybe we can return one, or we can even return all like this. Now how can we do that? We can convert this into a string because we need to serialize this into a string before we can send this. So let's see how to go about that. But before we do that, we need to inject our iPublisher endpoint, and I'll start using it. Let's use primary constructor for this. Okay, so in here, let's use this iPublisher. And we need this endpoint. Now let's say publisher or publish endpoint. Now in here, before we do it, you want to first have, let's say this is weather data. Okay, so I think I need to remove this. So this is the weather data, we stored it. And now once you have it in the variable, we can now string it. So let's say this is string data, or maybe we can use it straight ahead. So we need not to store it in here straight away. So once you have the, let's make this as an async, and now let's add this as a task. So this is task. And also, so once you have this stored in here, all we're going to do here is we're going to use an await. Then we have our publisher endpoint dot, we have publish. So with this publish, what are we going to publish? Let's realize this first in the form of string. So we're going to say serializer, JSON serializer. So dot serialize, then let's specify our weather data. We have it in here. Okay, but before we do that, we need to, since this is going to have in the form of string, maybe we can create a message in here. So from our shared, we can also add one class as maybe my message that I want to broadcast. So within my message, we can make this as, well, record. So this is public, and let's change this to record. So we can remove this. And now with this record, we can specify our string. That is the content that we want. So there's the content. We can remove everything here. Very simple one. Okay, so let's go back to our weather forecast. Not this one. All right, so in here, instead of passing on here, we're going to create new, and that is my message. Then let's specify our JSON serializer.serialize this in the form of a string. Pass it on here. And at the end of the day, we're going to return weather data. Quite simple. So we are publishing this. We are broadcasting this. We are pushing this to the RabbitMQ server after we are done performing any operation with it. Okay. So this is just a line of code is going to make this work. This is very simple. Okay. Good. Now this is going to push it. So how do you run the server of this RabbitMQ? We can use the window installer version, or we can use Docker. So let's have Docker. I believe you've installed Docker. If not, then download Docker Desktop. So I have mine already. So let me just launch my Docker Desktop. And we're going to download the image of this RabbitMQ, and I run it in here. So currently, if I go to my images, I don't have it in here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open my terminal. Now open your terminal. And terminal is going to be the window PowerShell. And in that, we're going to run our docker.docker run. Then detach. We're going to specify the name here. So this is the name that I'm giving to mine. Then this is the port. You have 2 ports in here. So we're going to have the message broker and then the UI port. Okay. So the first one here is going to be for the message broker port. That is a 5672 for the message broker port. And this is going to be for the UI that we can access and see the results. So that's the 15672. So when we are done running this, we're going to open to localhost. Then we're going to have this port to open our UI. Okay. And that is the image name that we're going to install. RabbitMQ 3-management. So run this to get this installed. If you don't have this image installed already, it's going to go to the Docker-Hub and now try to download and install and run this image on your computer. So let's wait, hit on enter key, and now let's move forward. Or maybe you can decide to remove the D. So we want to see the logs while it runs. So let's wait and see what's going to happen. Yes, so you can see that this is running. We have our on the process, we have this a log, and we are seeing everything. So let's wait peacefully and patiently for this. Yeah, so when you have a look here, you can see that we are having this HTTP, that's the management plugin, and it is listener started on the port 15672. So that is the second port that we specified. So we can navigate to this and have a look from the UI. So we can grab this. So I have pulled up my browser. So that's a local host. Then with that, I'm going to paste the port. So that is a 15672. And now this is going to open the RabbitMQ management UI. And I remember that we use the guest of what? Oh, the username, and now the password is guest. So make sure you have the same thing. And click on login. Now this is going to get us in. Great. So currently, when you have a look here, since I started this already, I have maybe Exchange 7 in here. But maybe yours, you're going to have nothing in here. So currently, you have the same thing as I'm having. These are the default stuffs that we have in here. Now that we have this, it means our RabbitMQ server is running, and it is ready to listen to all message that we're going to broadcast from our publisher. So quickly, let's go to our app in here, and now we're going to start running this. So let's run this as our consumer. We are using the publisher. So this is our publisher. That's what we've worked on. So yes, let's run the publisher. Click on this to get this run. So while this is running, we take a close look in here. That is a default one. You can see when you have a look from the host and now the name, these are default. Now we're going to have a new instance going to be added from our publisher. Aside from that, when we go to our connections, currently we have no connection in here, isn't it? When you go to overview, that is the default stuff that we have in here. No consumer, no channel, no connection created. Now keep this in mind. Keep watching this. Then as soon as this runs, we're going to publish or broadcast data or information or message through this RabbitMQ UI. Now let's have a look. So this is ready. Now click on weather forecast and then try this out. So this is going to get the published message code, and after that we're going to have this in here. As soon as we did that, you see we have connections 1, channel is 1, exchange is 8, right? So now you can see we have this current title, we have this bar here telling you that there is something waiting. Now see, by consumer we have none because we haven't created, we haven't formed our consumer, so we still have it at 0. Now if I go to the channel, you can see we have this port endpoint with the port, and also when you go to the exchange, you can see now we have shared, and it is using the class name. So you can see we have this is a project name as a shared C# library. We have the class that we created as my message. So it means that this is here waiting, and it's waiting for somebody or someone or some API to consume this. Okay, so currently it has no consumer. Now let's see how do we retrieve this. So now we broadcasted the message onto the server. How do we retrieve it from a different API? So let's go back here and see how we can retrieve that. We go to our external, this is not our consumer, so we are done with our publisher. We go to our consumer, and I know that we've already added our message class to this already, right? Good. That's a shared project. Instead, we've added to the project of the consumer API. Now, the next thing we're going to do here is, it's quite simple. We also need to register this. But before we do that, we need to create a service which is going to consume. So let's say my consumer service. Well, let me just create a folder in here. And since this is running, we cannot do that unless we stop this first. So consumer service, we can give it the name or any name at all that you feel you want to give it. or maybe I have consumer already, so maybe I can just maintain all the service. Then in here I'll create a class and I'll name it as consumer service. So you see, good. Now with this, in order for us to consume this, we need to inherit from maybe I consumer is an interface. So I consumer, which is coming from the MassTransit, and now let's specify our my message. So there is a class that you created, and it is coming from the shared. So in order for you to consume and publish, or publish and consume, they must inherit, or they must have the same shared model or class. So that's the reason why I just added that in there. Then after we are done with that, we have it extended already. But this is an interface, and guess what? We need to implement the interface. And I believe you've done this already. Yes, I believe you've done that. So you can see we have the context of this my message as a model that is coming in the form of my context. So we can extract the response from this context. Okay, so maybe we can use this logger to log this information. Well, let's try that. So in order to display that, we can use this iLogger. Now this iLogger, let's see, this is consumer service. Consumer service, then let's say this is logger. Now from this logger, what are you going to do? We're going to have this in the form of string, right? Because it's a list. So either we just display it in the form of a list, or we can visualize this in the form of object. Then we can display that. Well, we can do any of them. Okay, so let's try display it in the form of a list like that, because we're going to return or retrieve in the form of list. That's a string format. So let's do that. Now we have to remove this, and we can say that await then task.run, and now with this run we need to specify this. Let's use console.writeLine, and now writeLine, maybe we can say that weather forecast data. Well, so there's weather forecast data. Then let's use context dot, we can have message in here. Now this message is going to have content. So dots, let's see, content, yes. So we have this content in there. We're going to display the list that we have in the form of a string for us. Okay, so that is all that you do. After doing this, you need to restart the service. Maybe we can use a logger, and we can also log this as well. So this is a context. You can just grab this. Now let's go in there and register this. So we are using this logger to log this information. That's great. Now let's go back to our consumer. Go to program.cs file, and now here we can go ahead and grab what we have in here. So let's grab this, because it is the same thing that we're going to do, and add some service as well. So let's go back to our program, and in here let's add this. Now after we are done with that, what's the next thing that we need to do in order for us to notify or to get access to the service that we have created? It's quite simple. Let's add .customer. So add, is it customer or consumer? So add consumer, and now with this consumer, specify what you created, and that is a consumer service. Okay, now once you're done, at the bottom here, we have this configuration specified, right? And that is specified in between, not here, it's supposed to be, yes, in here. So we say this as CFG dot, then receive. You can see we CFG, but I have this context, and that's not what I need. So let's go back, and we have dot received endpoint. So with this endpoint, you can give it any endpoint of your choice. You're going to get created in the server. And I'm going to say this is maybe my weather endpoint. Okay, or maybe queue, etc. You can make it in the form of queue, or yeah, maybe we can maintain like this. Okay, so aside from that, we can have access to this. And now in here, let's configure our consumer. So we're going to say that is e.configure. So configure, do you have configure consumer? We have this. Okay, now within that, we need to specify our consumer service. So consumer service, and here, since you have this context, we can pass this context in here. So let's grab this and pass it on. Good. So now that we have this, it means this is working. It's going to work, although we haven't tested this, but trust me, this is going to work. All right, so now they're going to build the project together and run them as well. So first of all, I have a publisher. I'm going to run this publisher. Then I'm going to run this consumer as well. Now this is running, so I'll go back to the consumer, right click on consumer, although you can start multiple projects if you want. But I'm running it one after the another, so I'm also starting the consumer API. So at the end, I must have two APIs running, publisher and consumer. And now through the publisher, we're going to publish and broadcast our message. Let's see whether the consumer can consume this message and display in the console. So this is our consumer. Now this is our publisher. So all that you need to do here is we need to bring our endpoint. So that's our console. So we have our console as well for both. So you can see that here we have the publisher, and here we have the consumer. Now consumer, you can see from here that MassTransit, so bar started. And I want to check this configure endpoint, my weather queued. So we have this also configured. Now, in order for us to verify this, we can just take a look in here. Now from the overview, let's see. You can see that we have one consumer. So that is the current one that we have added. And we have it waiting nicely for us. So we have this as a consumer. Then we can now move on. This is our queue. You can see we have a name as my weather queue. The state is running. Yes. Okay. Now let's see. Let's go back to the exchange. And now we have a shared message. We're going to, let's see. So this is our publisher. Now as soon as I click on try this out, let's see whether we're going to receive it here. This is our consumer. So here. Click on try this out. Execute this. Yes, of course, we have it. So you can see we have the content that we did. We made a broke from. So we broadcasted this from our API here, that's a publisher, and we are retrieving it in another API. That's great. Amazing. So click on it again, and you have the same thing. So we have the message in here, and you're going to have it multiple times. You see? So we made a click of 3 times, and now we are having that. We can try this one more, and we see we have it. So the number of times that you issue a request, the number of times that you publish it, you broadcast the message, all subscribers are also going to receive it based on the number of times that you perform the same operation. Yeah, so with doing this, you've been able to integrate your RabbitMQ and MassTransit in your API to perform asynchronous communication. So I believe by now you have a solid understanding of how to implement asynchronous communication between APIs using MassTransit and RabbitMQ, and to make these stages or this work simple using Docker. This is a game changer for building scalable, reliable microservices architectures. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more awesome content from Netcode-Hub channel. Meet you again. Till then, stay safe and happy coding.